Captain Adrian Holt had been declared dead for 5 long years. During the final battle of the Galactic War, Earth's fleet was overwhelmed by the advanced alien forces of the Euthera Empire. Adrian, one of Earth's finest soldiers, had led his team in a desperate fight against overwhelming odds. When the reports came in, it was clear that the human forces had suffered a crushing defeat. Adrian was among the many presumed dead, his body lost to the destruction of the battlefield. On the other side of the galaxy, Queen Tarazek, leader of the Euthera Empire, mourned his loss deeply. She had once been his greatest enemy, but had come to respect him after their shared struggle during the war. Tarazek had never expected to see him again, but the pain of losing him lingered in her heart, a reminder of a life she could never have. She ruled her empire with an iron fist, but deep down, she held on to the memories of their brief moments together, their unexpected bond that had formed during the height of the conflict. The peace treaty had been signed, and the war was officially over. The celebrations across the galaxy were loud, but Tarazek's heart was silent. Adrian's loss had cast a shadow over her life, yet she remained strong, leading her empire with the resolve of a queen who had lost too much. Life, as she knew it, was beginning to move on, until a report came that would shake the galaxy to its core. In the desolate wilderness of an abandoned world, a lone figure had been discovered, standing tall amid the wreckage. The man was human, with battle-worn armor, and when the discovery was made, the soldiers were certain it was a ghost, another casualty of the war. But there was something different about this man. When the first wave of rescue teams arrived, they immediately recognized his face. Adrian Holt, the man who was supposed to be dead, the man who had sacrificed everything for the galaxy's peace, was standing before them. He had survived against all odds, but no one knew how. His memories were fragmented, his past a blur of blood, battle, and the inexplicable silence of death. Adrian was confused, disoriented, but undeniably alive. He didn't know where he had been or how he had returned. All he knew was that the world he had left behind was no longer the same. Word of his return spread like wildfire. The galaxy, once consumed by war, now trembled under the weight of this new reality. Adrian Holt was alive. The shockwaves of this discovery reached the Euthera Empire, and no one was more stunned than Queen Tarazek. She had never believed that Adrian could have survived. She had buried the thought of him, locked away the pain. Now, standing before her was the man she thought was lost forever. But the man she saw was different, older, hardened, and carrying the weight of countless secrets. Razak's mind raced. Was he truly the same man she had known? Or was this stranger something else entirely? Adrian's return was not a miracle. It was a sign that something deeper, darker, was at play. And Tarazek knew that the galaxy was about to be changed in ways they could not yet understand. When Adrian Holt entered the Grand Palace of the Euthera Empire, it was as though time had stopped. The vast hall, usually echoing with the steps of loyal soldiers and officials, now felt eerily silent. Adrian, his face gaunt from the harsh years of war and survival, stood at the center, taking in the alien surroundings. His once commanding presence had been reduced to a man uncertain of his place in this strange world. Queen Tarazek stood at the end of the hall, her eyes fixed on him. The years had not been kind to her either. Her regal appearance, though unbroken, held a weight of responsibility that Adrian had never seen before. She had ruled her empire with strength, but now, seeing him again, she was struggling to maintain her composure. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the tension between them was palpable. Adrian's heart raced, unsure of what to feel. Tarazek, on the other hand, felt a whirlwind of emotions she could not control: shock, disbelief, and something deeper, more personal, that she refused to acknowledge. You're alive." Her voice was soft, but edged with a disbelief that mirrored his own. Adrian nodded slowly, his voice hoarse. "I don't understand how, but I am." The queen stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his face. "We buried you. The reports, the bodies, we saw you fall." "I don't know what happened," Adrian replied, his words measured but filled with confusion. "The last thing I remember was the battle. I thought I was dead too. But I woke up, alone. No one else was around." Tarazak's eyes softened, though she quickly masked it. "You have been gone a long time. The war ended. The galaxy has changed." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Adrian, now fully aware of his presence here, felt the strange pull of something he had not expected. Razak was not just his former enemy. She had been the last person he'd ever expected to see again. Yet now here she was, a ruler of an empire that he thought he would never interact with again. "And you've changed too," Adrian said, his voice quieter now. Razak's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I had to. When you disappeared, I became something more than a queen. I became the leader of an empire, a symbol of hope and fear." "I'm sorry," Adrian said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I never meant for things to turn out this way." Tarazak regarded him for a long moment. Then, to Adrian's surprise, she nodded. "Neither did I." A long silence followed, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps echoing down the corridor. Neither of them spoke, but in that quiet, an understanding began to form between them. Their paths had been shaped by war, loss, and survival. Now, with the war over and their worlds forever changed, the question remained, what would become of them both? Adrian had returned, but Tarazak could not shake the feeling that his survival was not the end of something. It was only the beginning. As days passed, Adrian Holt's return became the talk of the galaxy. His survival was a mystery that no one could explain, and rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed he was a ghost, others thought he might be a weapon created by unknown forces. But Adrian himself had no answers. He had no memory of what had happened after the battle that was supposed to have claimed his life. All he knew was that he had returned, and the world he once knew was different. Queen Tarazak, too, was grappling with the return of her former enemy. The more time she spent with Adrian, the more she realized that their reunion was not the peaceful event she had hoped for. Something was wrong. Adrian wasn't the same man who had once led humanity's forces against her empire. He was different, distant, haunted by something that seemed to linger just out of reach. It was during one of their late-night conversations that Adrian spoke of strange visions he had experienced. He described dreams of cold, dark places, of alien structures hidden deep within unknown planets. The visions had started when he regained consciousness, but they felt like memories. Memories of places he had never visited and people he had never met. "I keep seeing them, Tarazak," Adrian said one evening, his voice low with confusion. "Faces I don't recognize, places that shouldn't exist. And then, I see something else. A device. It's so powerful that it feels like it's pulling at my mind. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it has everything to do with why I'm alive." Razak's eyes narrowed. She had heard whispers of a hidden weapon, a mysterious force capable of altering the balance of power in the galaxy. The artifact, as some called it, was rumored to be an ancient object that could grant immense power. Legends told of its ability to change the fate of entire civilizations, to erase memories, and even bring the dead back to life. Could it be possible that this artifact was the reason Adrian had survived? Could it be the key to unlocking the secrets of his return? Adrian's voice broke through her thoughts. The war, Tarazak. It wasn't just a battle for control. It was a distraction, a cover. Someone knew about this artifact, and they used the war to hide its true purpose. Tarazak stood up, her mind racing. She had heard the rumors, but until now, she had dismissed them as mere superstition. Now, standing in front of Adrian, she couldn't ignore the reality of what he was saying. The weapon had been hidden in plain sight, and both their worlds had been manipulated to keep its existence a secret. If this artifact exists, Tarazak said, her voice steady but filled with urgency, we need to find it before anyone else does. Whoever controls it will control the galaxy. Adrian nodded, his expression grim. I don't know where it is, but I'll find it. I'll uncover the truth, no matter what it costs. The Queen met his gaze. You're not alone in this, Adrian. I'll help you. Together, we'll face whatever is coming. For the first time since his return, Adrian felt a spark of hope. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was determined to uncover the truth about his survival and the mysterious force that had brought him back to life. The galaxy was no longer just a place of war. It was a puzzle, and the answers were hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. Adrian and Tarazak had little time to dwell on their personal past. The galaxy's future was at stake, and both knew that the artifact they were searching for could change everything. The whispers of its existence had been dismissed as myths, but now, those same whispers seemed to hold the key to Adrian's miraculous survival. Tarazak had arranged for Adrian to meet with the highest advisors in her empire. Together, they would study old texts, maps, and encrypted data, searching for any clues about the artifact. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that the artifact was not just a weapon. It was part of an ancient, long-forgotten prophecy. The artifact was linked to the union of two races, a human and an alien, that would either bring about a new era of peace or plunge the galaxy into chaos. Adrian stood before a large holographic display, watching as ancient star maps flickered to life. This artifact, it's not just a weapon, he muttered to himself. It's something bigger. It was hidden, and people fought wars over it long before we ever met. Tarazak approached him, her brow furrowed in thought. You're right. The prophecy says that the one who finds the artifact will shape the destiny of the universe. But it's not just about power. It's about balance. The artifact can either destroy or unite. Adrian turned to her, the weight of the words sinking in. So if this prophecy is real, that means your survival, Tarazak finished for him, was no accident. It was part of a plan that has been set in motion long before either of us were born. The realization hit Adrian like a cold blast. His return was no random chance. He had been chosen, but by whom and for what purpose? And what did this prophecy mean for the future of Earth and the Ethera Empire? As they continued their research, Tarazak uncovered a disturbing detail. The artifact wasn't merely hidden. It had been locked away by an ancient order known only as the Guardians. These beings had the knowledge and power to control the artifact, but they had vanished long ago. The only clue left behind was a symbol, a mark that matched one Adrian had seen in his visions. I've seen that symbol, Adrian said, his voice low. It's the same one from the dreams, the visions I had after waking up. It's not a coincidence. Tarazak studied the symbol more closely. The Guardians were believed to be extinct, but this symbol, it's linked to them. It suggests they had a hand in creating the artifact, or at least in hiding it. They might still be out there, watching, waiting. Adrian's heart raced. So someone's been keeping track of this for centuries. If the Guardians are still alive, they might be the key to finding the artifact before it falls into the wrong hands. Tarazak nodded. But it's also possible that the Guardians have their own agenda. We need to find them, but we must be careful. We don't know who is truly on our side. Adrian knew their journey had just begun. What they were about to uncover could shatter everything they thought they knew about their pasts, their people, and the very galaxy they lived in. The search for the artifact was not just a fight for survival. It was a battle for control over the future of all civilizations. The truth was out there, hidden in the past, and it was up to Adrian and Tarazak to find it before it was too late. Adrian and Tarazak had been searching for clues about the artifact for weeks, their days filled with hours of study and strategy. But the more they learned, the more they realized they needed to move beyond mere research. They needed to act. The whispers of the artifact's power had reached the wrong ears, and there were others in the galaxy who would stop at nothing to control it. The key to unlocking the artifact's location lay in the hands of an enemy faction, one that had once been neutral but now seemed to be shifting its allegiance. The Velvani, a group of mercenaries known for their ruthlessness and shady dealings, had been seen in the area where the artifact was last known to be hidden. The mercenaries were rumored to have come across old Guardian technology, and Adrian suspected they were closer to the artifact than anyone realized. Razak knew the risks. The Velvani were dangerous, and their base was heavily guarded. But if they were going to stop the wrong people from finding the artifact first, they had to act quickly. And for that, they needed to infiltrate the Velvani base. "We'll need to be careful," Razak said, her voice serious as she examined the holographic map of the enemy base. The Velvani have been known to have advanced security systems. Getting in unnoticed will be nearly impossible. Adrian nodded. "We've dealt with worse. But this is different. The artifact could be hidden there. And if they get their hands on it, there's no telling what they could do." The plan was risky. They would need to infiltrate the heavily guarded base, disable the security systems, and find the artifact before the Velvani realized they were there. Adrian had never backed down from a challenge, but this mission was unlike any he had faced before. Razak's eyes gleamed with determination. "We can't fail. The future of both our people depends on it." Adrian and Razak, disguised as mercenaries, approached the base under the cover of darkness. The air was thick with tension as they crossed the open ground, their movements swift and silent. The moonlight reflected off the metallic surfaces of the Velvani structures, casting eerie shadows across the land. Once inside, the pair split up, with Adrian disabling security cameras and Razak taking out the guards with swift precision. Their mission was clear: find the artifact and leave without alerting anyone to their presence. Adrian made his way deeper into the base, his heart pounding with each step. The further he went, the more he felt the weight of the task ahead of him. The artifact was somewhere nearby, hidden in the labyrinth of corridors and rooms. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence of the base, every shadow a potential threat. But Adrian pushed forward, determined not to let fear stand in his way. After what felt like hours, Adrian reached a large chamber deep within the base. It was dimly lit, but there, in the center of the room, was a pedestal, empty. The artifact was gone. Razak's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Adrian, what's happening? Where's the artifact?" Adrian's mind raced. The mercenaries had already taken it. They were too late. "Someone beat us to it," he said, his voice grim. "The artifact is gone." But as he turned to leave, a loud crash echoed through the corridor, and Adrian felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The Velvani knew they were here. Their cover had been blown. "Razak, we need to leave. Now," Adrian shouted, his hand reaching for his weapon as the sound of footsteps grew louder. The chase had begun. Adrian and Razak barely escaped the Velvani base, their hearts pounding as they fled into the night. The sounds of pursuing footsteps echoed behind them, and the distant flash of security alarms lit up the sky. But they knew they had no choice. The artifact had been taken, and they couldn't afford to be caught. Once they were safely away from the base, Adrian and Razak stopped to catch their breath. The cool night air bit at their skin, but it did little to cool the fire burning within them. They had failed their mission, and they knew the Velvani would stop at nothing to use the artifact for their own gain. Adrian's thoughts raced. What were the Velvani planning to do with the artifact? And why had they been so desperate to find it? The more he thought about it, the more he felt like they were missing something crucial, something important. Razak noticed the troubled look on his face. "What's wrong?" "I don't understand," Adrian said, his voice low. "We've been looking for the artifact for so long, But now that we know the Velvanni have it, it doesn't feel like the end. It feels like the beginning of something bigger. Tarazak frowned, then stepped closer. What do you mean? The artifact. Adrian continued. It's part of an ancient prophecy. I remember something from my visions, something I couldn't fully understand. The prophecy talks about a union between two races, a human and an alien. And the one who controls the artifact will change the fate of the galaxy. I think that's why I'm here. That's why I survived. Razak's eyes widened in realization. The prophecy. She stepped back, her mind working quickly. I've heard of it. It's an old Ithera legend, passed down through generations. It was believed to be just a story, a myth. But if it's true, everything changes. Adrian looked at her, confused. What do you mean? The prophecy says that when the artifact is found, the human and alien who control it will either bring peace or cause destruction. But it's more than just power. It's about balance. The artifact will either unite or divide us. If we don't control it, if we don't stop the Velvanni, it could bring the galaxy to its knees. Adrian's heart raced. So the Velvanni. They want to use it to control the galaxy. Tarazak nodded. They don't know the full power of the artifact, but they will. And once they do, they will stop at nothing to make sure no one can challenge them. We must find them before it's too late. Adrian felt the weight of her words. He had never believed in prophecies, never thought that fate had a hand in his life. But now, standing here with Tarazak, he couldn't ignore the reality of what was happening. The artifact, the prophecy, and the choices they made would decide the future of their people, and possibly the entire galaxy. There's no turning back now, Adrian said, his voice firm. We have to stop them, Tarazak. We have to find the artifact before it's too late. Tarazak met his gaze. Together, we will. We'll stop the Velvanni, and we'll make sure the artifact's power is used for good, not for destruction. The two of them stood there in the dark, knowing that the path ahead would be difficult and dangerous. But they also knew that the fate of the galaxy depended on what they did next. They had one chance to set things right, and they couldn't afford to fail. Adrian and Tarazak's journey had led them to the edge of a galaxy on the brink of war. The Velvanni now held the artifact, a weapon of unimaginable power, and Adrian knew that they would stop at nothing to use it for their own gain. Time was running out, and every moment spent searching was a moment the Velvanni grew stronger. They traveled across the galaxy, moving from one hidden base to the next, following rumors and whispers. Each lead seemed to bring them closer to the artifact, but it was always just out of reach. Adrian felt the weight of failure pressing on his shoulders, but Tarazak never let him give up. She reminded him that they had come too far to turn back now. We'll find them, Adrian, Tarazak would say, her voice steady despite the danger they faced. We've come this far, and we're not stopping until we've got the artifact. But deep down, Adrian felt something unsettling. The Velvanni were more than just mercenaries. There was something else driving them, something beyond just the desire for power. They were being guided by something or someone. As the days passed, Adrian became more convinced that the Velvanni weren't acting alone. They were following a leader, someone who knew about the artifact and its true power. Then one day, they caught a break. A source, an old ally from Adrian's past, reached out to them with information. The Velvanni were not the only ones after the artifact. A dark figure, a mysterious leader who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, had appeared. This leader was known as Lord Selir, a powerful and ruthless figure who had once been a high-ranking officer in the Ithera Empire. After being betrayed by his superiors, Selir had disappeared into the blackness of space, building a vast network of followers in secret. Lord Selir, Adrian whispered the name, his mind racing. I've heard rumors, but I didn't believe them. He's real, Tarazak said, her eyes hardening. And he's after the artifact. If he gets his hands on it, he'll have the power to destroy everything. They quickly made their way to the last known location of Lord Sellers' base, a remote planet deep in an uncharted sector. The journey was dangerous, and every moment felt like they were walking straight into a trap. But Adrian and Turazak were determined. The fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance, and they couldn't afford to fail. When they arrived, the planet was quiet. Too quiet. The surface was barren, a wasteland of cracked earth and swirling winds. It was the perfect place for someone like Lord Siller to hide. As they made their way toward the center of the planet's largest crater, they could feel the presence of something ominous in the air. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a loud crash, followed by a voice, low and menacing. "So you've come for the artifact." Lord Siller's voice echoed across the desolate landscape. Adrian's heart skipped a beat. They were too late. "We've come to stop you," Turazak shouted back, her voice filled with defiance. Lord Siller stepped out from the shadows, his tall, imposing figure cloaked in darkness. His face was hidden behind a helmet, but Adrian could see the power in his eyes. This was no ordinary enemy. Zeller was a man driven by a thirst for vengeance, and he would not be stopped easily. "The artifact is mine," Zeller growled, his voice filled with cold certainty. "And with it, I will destroy all who stand in my way." Adrian tightened his grip on his weapon. The final battle had begun. They had found him, but they had also uncovered something even more dangerous: the true cost of wielding such power. Would they be able to stop Lord Siller and prevent the artifact from falling into the wrong hands, or would this be the beginning of the end for the galaxy? There was no turning back now. Adrian stood face to face with Lord Siller, the man who had been hiding in the shadows, manipulating events from afar. The tension in the air was thick, as if the very atmosphere knew that this moment would decide the fate of the galaxy. Adrian could feel his heart racing, but he remained steady. Turazak stood beside him, her eyes locked on the enemy, her every muscle tense with readiness. Siller's voice broke the silence. "You think you can stop me, human? You think you can take what is mine? The artifact belongs to me, and with it, I will destroy everything you've worked for." Adrian's grip tightened on his weapon, but Turazak stepped forward, her voice calm and controlled. "We're not here for the artifact, Zeller. We're here to stop you from using it to destroy everything." Zeller laughed, a low, cruel sound that echoed in the barren landscape. "You still don't understand, do you? The artifact doesn't just have the power to destroy. It has the power to remake the universe. I will reshape it as I see fit. And you, both of you, will be nothing but forgotten relics." Adrian could feel the weight of Zeller's words, the depth of his obsession. But it wasn't just the artifact that Zeller wanted. It was the control, the absolute power to bend the galaxy to his will. "We won't let you do that," Turazak said firmly. But as Adrian stepped forward, ready for the fight, a sudden, shocking betrayal rocked them both. A figure emerged from the shadows behind them, a figure Adrian thought he could trust. "Don't be so quick to judge, Queen," the voice said. It was familiar, too familiar. Adrian turned, his eyes widening as he saw the traitor. It was Jarek, one of his closest allies from his days in the human fleet. Jarek had been with him from the start, a loyal soldier, a trusted friend. Or so he thought. "Jarek," Adrian said, his voice a mixture of shock and disbelief. "What are you doing? Why are you with him?" Jarek's expression was cold, his eyes hard and unfeeling. "I've been working for Xalier all along, Holt. You never understood what was at stake. The artifact is the future, and it's the only way to save the galaxy from itself." Adrian felt a rush of anger. "You're lying. You've betrayed everyone, your own people, your own comrades, for power." Jarek didn't flinch. "Power is the only way to ensure survival. Holt, you of all people should understand that. You were always too naive, too focused on ideals. The galaxy doesn't work like that. Zeller is offering the only real chance for peace. Tarazak stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. You're a fool, Jarek. Zeller isn't offering peace. He's offering control. He will destroy everything, and you'll be no different than the rest of us, a pawn in his game. But Jarek didn't listen. With a swift movement, he drew a weapon and aimed it at Tarazak. It's too late for that, he said coldly. I've already made my choice. Adrian's heart pounded as he moved to protect Tarazak. He had never imagined that someone he trusted could betray him like this. The galaxy seemed to shift under the weight of the betrayal. But in that moment, Adrian knew one thing. No matter what it took, he couldn't let Selir or Jarek win. With a sharp motion, Adrian lunged toward Jarek, his thoughts blurred by the rage and confusion that now filled him. There was no time to think about how or why this happened. All that mattered now was stopping the betrayal before it was too late. The fight was fierce, but the true battle was only just beginning. Adrian and Tarazak had to fight not just against Zeller, but against the betrayal from within their own ranks. The fate of the galaxy depended on who could be trusted and who could be saved. The betrayal had left a bitter taste in Adrian's mouth, but there was no time to dwell on it. Jarek, once a trusted ally, had aligned himself with Lord Selir, and with his help, the dark figure had already gained significant control over the artifact. Adrian knew that if they were going to stop the chaos from spreading, they had to move quickly. Adrian and Tarazak regrouped, retreating to a nearby cave deep in the planet's surface. The only thing that mattered now was to stop Selir, take back the artifact, and prevent the galaxy from being reshaped by his ruthless hands. Tarazak sat on a rock, her face hard as she thought about the betrayal. I should have known, she muttered. Jarek was too ambitious, too eager for power. It was only a matter of time before he made his move. Adrian, still angry, could only nod. I never saw it coming. I trusted him with everything, and now it's like everything we fought for is falling apart. We can still stop Selir, Tarazak said, her voice steady. We just need to take the fight to him. Together, we have a chance. Adrian's mind was racing. They couldn't afford to waste time. The galaxy's future depended on them finding Selir's hidden stronghold, stealing the artifact, and breaking his control over it before it was too late. But with Jarek's betrayal, Adrian knew there were likely more traitors among their ranks. The fight ahead would not be just against Selir, it would be against the very people they had once trusted. There's one thing I know for sure, Adrian said, his voice firm with determination. We can't let him win. Not after everything we've been through. Tarazak stood up, meeting his gaze. No, we can't. But we need a plan. If we go in without one, we're doomed. Adrian nodded. He understood. They had to be smart. No more impulsive moves. No more risks. It was time for a careful, well-thought-out strike. The two of them spent hours planning, studying maps of the enemy base, and looking for weaknesses in their security. They knew that if they were going to make it out alive, they had to be clever. It wouldn't be easy, but they were used to fighting impossible odds. As they prepared for their final assault, Adrian felt a strange calm settle over him. It wasn't a sense of certainty, but rather a quiet understanding. This was the endgame. There would be no second chances. If they failed, the galaxy would fall into the hands of a tyrant. But if they succeeded, if they could defeat Selir and take back the artifact, it would not only save their worlds, but it would change everything. It would mark the beginning of a new era, one where humans and aliens could stand together in peace, no longer divided by war and distrust. We'll do this together, Adrian said, looking at Tarazak. She nodded, her expression unwavering. Together. The final battle was upon them. They knew what was at stake. The artifact was not just a weapon. It was the future of the galaxy. And as Adrian and Tarazak prepared to face Selir one last time, they knew that whatever happened, They had given everything they had to protect the galaxy they called home. The galaxy was on the brink of a new beginning, or its end, and only they could decide which it would be. Adrian and Tarazak stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking out over the destruction that lay before them. The final battle was over, but the cost had been heavy. Lord Salir was defeated, the artifact was secured, and the galaxy was saved, but not without sacrifice. The skies above were clear now, the darkness that had clouded them for so long slowly fading away. The war was over, and peace had been restored. But as Adrian stood next to Tarazak, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within him. The journey they had gone through had changed them both. Tarazak turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "We've won, Adrian. The artifact is no longer a threat. The galaxy is safe." Adrian nodded, but his heart was heavy. He had lost so much along the way. Friends, allies, and a part of himself that he wasn't sure he could get back. The journey had been more than just a fight for survival. It had been a fight for the future of both their people. And while they had won, it didn't feel like a victory he could fully celebrate. "I know," he said quietly, "but at what cost? So many lost their lives. So much was destroyed." Tarazak placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did what no one else could. You led us through the darkest times, Adrian. You gave everything to protect us all." Adrian looked at her, his thoughts drifting to the past and all that had brought them here. He had never imagined he would return to this world after thinking he was gone forever. And yet, here he was, standing beside Tarazak, a queen and a warrior, both shaped by the same war, the same loss. "You know, Tarazak," Adrian said with a small, bittersweet smile, "I never thought I'd end up here, back with you, standing side by side." Tarazak's gaze softened. "Neither did I, but we've come a long way together, and we've done something no one thought was possible." The two of them stood there for a long moment, the weight of their shared history settling between them. Adrian had always thought that his journey was one of survival, but it had become something more, a journey of understanding, of seeing the galaxy through the eyes of someone else, someone who was not so different after all. "I think it's time for both of us to move on," Adrian said finally. "We fought for so long, Tarazak. Maybe it's time to let go of the past and start something new." Tarazak nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "I agree. We've given everything we could to bring peace, but now it's time for others to carry that responsibility forward, for us to heal." Adrian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. It was time. Time to go back to Earth. Time to rebuild his life. Time to find peace after everything that had happened. He could not stay in the past forever. With a final look at Tarazak, Adrian turned to leave. She watched him go, her heart heavy, but her spirit strong. They had done what they came here to do. They had saved the galaxy. And now, it was time for both of them to find their own paths. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: peace had been restored, and with it, the hope that a new era of unity could rise from the ashes of the old. As Adrian walked away, he knew that his journey had ended, but the story of the galaxy was just beginning.